Good afternoon and welcome to today's episode of the Freight Insider Podcast, where we are opening the door to the business of freight. I'm your host, Paige Siplon. I always say that the freight is really the common denominator in this complicated math problem that we call our economy. Literally every business is touched by freight, but how it's touched and how it impacts us really varies quite greatly. Some companies exist to move the freight, others track it and have technology, some manufacture it, while others ship and receive it and share it and sell it with consumers. The business of freight is complicated, it's exciting, and frankly, a well too kept secret of a weapon for businesses around the state of Georgia and around the world. Today, I have a very special guest joining me. I'd call him an old friend. He has over 40 years of experience running the Diaz Group, and it's as its president and CEO. The Diaz Group is the management company for Diaz Foods, Diaz Produce, EDUA Holdings, Cena Fine Foods in New Jersey, and International Imports, and whose total combined revenues exceed $200 million so far. He serves on multiple corporate boards, including Ryder's Systems Corporate Advisory Board, Young Harris College, and literally pages and pages that we'll talk about of things that he's given back, as well as many community boards and leadership boards like the Atlanta Metro Chamber of Commerce, Emory University Center for Ethics, Georgia State University's College Board. So it's really great pleasure, I'd say. Welcome to the Freight Insider, Rene.
Thank you, Paige.
We really appreciate you coming on this with us. We look forward to hearing your story. You and I worked together most closely when you were on the Georgia Department of Economic Development Advisory Board of Directors back, it seems like forever ago. But I think that's where one of the places we first met.
Yes, I know. We've met I think our first board meeting was in Savannah.
That's right. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I think that's literally the first place we met. But it's been a neat journey so far for both of us. I'm now with Team One Logistics, using some of the relationships and friendships we built over the years. So wanted to talk a little bit about your personal freight journey, and then we'll get into what you've created and the empire you've built very successfully with Diaz Foods. But let's start from where your roots began. I understand you were born in Cuba. Tell us how you came to the United States and your upbringing and how it kind of got you where you are today.
Sure. So born in Cuba, I'm half Cuban, half Lebanese. My mother was born in Cuba, but her parents left Lebanon in my grandparents, 1922. But came straight to Atlanta. My dad's youngest sister was studying here in Atlanta when Fidel Castro took over, so they made Atlanta their home. So when we got out in 1967, I was 6 years old and just came straight to Atlanta. My uncle and my aunt were both established. First job my dad had was Atlanta Journal-Constitution, throwing newspapers. I was 7, I would help. And then, 20-something years later, 14 years later, I worked for Atlanta Journal-Constitution as well for a summer job. So that's how we.
That's cool. And so, you've had a lot of, you didn't do this alone. You were brought into sort of the arms of the city of Atlanta and your aunt and uncle. I know you had a bunch of role models growing up. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the people that were influential in your life and made you the businessman you are.
Sure. What do they say? It takes a village, right? This one, it took a country to help me out. But, when we came to Atlanta, since I was a young boy, I started working. I had to work with my father through newspapers after school. And then when I turned, I think it was 9 or 10, started working at my grandfather's first little grocery store on the corner of 6th and Peachtree, which I drove by there this morning and saw a high-rise condominium complex.
Oh, wow.
And then 2 years later, my dad opened a store, so I started working there. And I was in charge of the American grocery buying, and one thing led to another. But, role models, you mentioned role models. Role models are extremely important, and I've had several in the family. Then a lot of folks, when you mentioned nonprofits, that I've met along the way, and they really showed me more what corporate responsibility is like. But in the family, my father was the true entrepreneur, and that's what he taught me, how to be an entrepreneur, the salesmanship. We were in 29 states. My dad can go into any little town in Indiana and walk into a restaurant, and someone that back then would know my dad.
Wow.
So I learned salesmanship and entrepreneurship from my father. My Cuban grandfather taught me work ethics. don't keep your hands in your pocket, get up early in the morning and work till nightfall and take time off. And then my Lebanese grandfather taught me business ethics and morals, which is very different than work ethics. Work ethics is you show up on time and do what you said you're going to do. Business ethics is you don't lie, you don't cheat, you create a community within a community. And I think the most important is my mother, right? We all have moms, and moms tend to be soft disciplinary, right? You don't hear them more than your dads, but they don't show that. And my mom taught me more what I consider just empathy and kindness to folks. So if I had to deal with an issue, she's like, be soft, remember where they came from, just like you did. So there's a lot of that empathy that kicks into our, I guess, moral fiber of our company, understanding where folks come from.
Yeah. Sounds like you had some great role models and that you remember them. And obviously you put that into practice in your business and your leadership and give back that you've done in the community. It's funny. You mentioned the moms, the whole talk softly and carry a big stick. It's amazing how women have had impact on our lives and shaped us into the men there's behind every man, there's a better woman, as they say. So it sounds like your mom was in that role too.
My wife keeps me in place too. So between her and my mom right now, wow.
Yeah.
I have to ask permission for anything.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just keeps it out of the ditches, as they say. So you went from that, the great work ethics and the business ethics and the role models you had. So then that sort of kicked off what we say here is, your freight journey. And freight's a big word. It means a lot of different things. Again, kind of the point of this, discussion. So tell us a little bit about how you started you talked a little bit about starting at your dad's grocery store at age 10 and 12. And then sort of that evolved into part of what I believe is part of your company now at age 18. So talk a little bit about that and how that started when you turned 18.
So my dad being the entrepreneur, he had a little store on the corner of 5th and Girard in Midtown, about 2,000 square feet. And he brought in products from Africa. Before DeKalb Farmers Market existed, we were carrying African products, Jamaican products, Haitian products, and of course, Cuban and Mexican and Latin American products. So there were a lot of what we call weekend warriors living in Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, all the forts nearby, Warner Robins Air Force Base, and a lot of them were Puerto Ricans, and they would come to our store and buy Hispanic products and take it back to the military base and sell it to the Latinos that were in the military. But it got to the point that our little store could handle it. So I had just graduated from Marist, and my uncle ran all of operations for Atlanta Journal-Constitution and got me my first real job where I didn't work for a family member. My dad decides to open up a warehouse and corner of 10th and Juniper, which is now a parking lot. And he goes, quit your job, change your schedule at school. I was going to Georgia State, or starting to go to Georgia State, and you're going to run a little warehouse. And I said, sure. And at the beginning, it was just servicing our five or six grocery stores at the time. And then these weekend warriors would come on the weekends and they would buy groceries from us. My dad had a really good reputation, relationship with a lot of the Mexican restaurants. So he introduced me to a lot of them, and one thing led to another, and I started selling food service to restaurants. And back then, the Mexican food business in Atlanta was just booming. They were starting to boom. So we started with 2 or 3 Mexican restaurants. Nuevo Laredo, which back then was U.S. Bar and Grill. Chance Evans was one of our first customers. To that, one thing led to another. And talking about freight, I remember we opened up a Mexican restaurant and just about 2 miles north of the Big Chicken. Now we're talking 1981, 82. I remember the sales rep that I had at the time had to pack a lunch and check his air pressure in his tires and fill up because he was going out of town, right? Just north of Big Chicken. Today we deliver from Homestead, Florida, all the way to Chicago, northern part of New York, Connecticut, and probably 100 miles west of Mississippi. Wow. So 29 states out of 3 distribution centers. So what basically was originally a little warehouse for our business. Today, it's a total of 4 warehouses, close to 500,000 square feet of distribution.
That's incredible. Yeah, identify a need, fill the need, and keep working hard at it. It's kind of that's the spirit of an entrepreneur. It sounds like your dad was certainly that guy, and I think there's a lot of folks out there who are glad he was.
Yeah, he was the ideas man. He would come in and say, "Son, I got this idea. Well, this is just, I want to open up a bakery." I said, "Okay," and he does. And then he goes, "Okay, now you manage it." So then he went to the next thing. So great ideas, man. And I was the guy that make sure the trucks got out on time, and everything was loaded, the purchasing was done, and all that.
Yeah. Arguable which one's more important, right? You can't execute if you don't have a great idea, but you can't have, the other way around as well. So.
But I'm very lucky. I have my son and my nephew in the business, and they both have that, relationship building capacity. So they're on both have sales teams, and they started doing sales, actually working in the warehouse, loading, unloading trucks, and from them went into sales. So now they manage their own sales teams. So they're keeping my best spirit by visiting customers.
That's awesome. That's very cool. So along that journey, there's been a lot of things that impacted your journey. What's been the greatest impact on your freight journey? Kind of moving into the business side of things a little more. What's been the biggest impact to your journey?
Yeah, I think there's always milestones, right? Something that dramatically changes the way you do business. And there really two. One was a financial one, and the other was the freight one. I'll do the financial one first.
Yeah.
We were doing business back then with CNS Bank since we came from Cuba in '67. That's the only bank we ever used. We became for the one branch, the largest, customer for them. And the branch manager realized they were underserving me, and they put me, back then it became be a Nations Bank on the commercial side. And I went from a $25,000 line of credit that was guaranteed with a $25,000 CD. So they were letting me borrow my own money back to a non-collateral $400,000 line of credit. That was a game changer, a game changer for us.
Yeah.
Because I no longer had to worry about having to make a deposit or collecting money today to make the obligation. I had a safety net.
Right.
Same thing with transportation. We started first with, actually it was a 1967 hippie Volkswagen van. That was my first delivery, right? Truck.
Really?
Twice. Had a friend who was a mechanic, put a 4-cylinder Porsche engine in the whole Volkswagen. That's how many deliveries.
You don't have that truck. You don't have that van anymore, do you?
No.
Yeah, bet you wish you did.
I'm trying to find it. I've been looking. They're super expensive now. Oh my God, 30,000.
Everything old is more expensive than new now. From used cars to collectibles,
That's why I tell my wife, keep me. I'm old. That's a good thing, right?
You're worth more now, right?
Yeah.
Like fine wine. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or old Volkswagens, I guess, right?
But so the game changer, and I remember our first truck was our real first truck was a 1960 something Mercedes box truck with wooden floors, right? But the game changer was Ryder transportation. When we switched over from owning our equipment, by that time we were already delivering like to Augusta, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina, Birmingham, Alabama. So we were going out of state. Then you had issues. The tax requirement for the fuel that you purchased in those states, you had to record it, you had to track it.
Yeah.
It was out of, for a little bitty company like ours back then, it was a lot of work. The worst part, if you broke down, I remember for Savannah I broke down in Savannah one time. It was a transmission, and it could have been battery for all you know, right? The guy says it's your transmission, it could be $1,000. We can fix it by tomorrow. What do you do, right? You have to fix it. So Ryder transportation really became a game changer for us. It got me from being a mechanic and a maintenance guy to focus on my business, which is really moving product from point A to point B.
Yeah.
That's our, what we do. We move freight. We sell product, but really the service that we provide is the movement of freight from one point to the other.
Getting it there. Yeah, for sure.
To me, that was the real game changer. If it broke down, I'll pick up the phone, I'll call Ryder. They would have a technician go out and look at it, or they would tow it. In fact, one time in Augusta, our truck broke down and he had 3 deliveries made. And Ryder came in, towed the truck, and I go, wait a minute, can you tow him to the 3 stops in Augusta? Let me get my load off. And they towed him to 3 deliveries. All right, got my load off. And then they fixed the truck. And
wow.
Because otherwise the driver would have to spend the night. So I think that was really a game changer for us.
Yeah, it's huge. The other thing and I talked a little bit about this before, you're one of the biggest impacts you've had, not just on your freight journey, but the freight journey of so many other people. You talked about now your son, I think your nephew you mentioned, who are in your business, but and literally you look at the long list of things that you've done and you've given back. One of the things that I'll say that I think has had a huge impact on your freight journey and the people that have been around you, including myself, is leadership. And I'm literally reading off your bio, which is incredible. And I'm not just saying that because you're my guest here on the show. It's true. I mean, the list is what it is, right? From your education, being at the Diversity Leadership Academy of Atlanta, to the Regional Leadership Institute, to being on Leadership Atlanta, just as the sort of extra education that you went out and got and did because you knew it was important to you and the people that are around you. And then the list of boards, I'll sort of skip over. You mentioned the Ryder Customer Service Board, and those things are fantastic, and the other ones you've been on. But I mean, frankly, beyond just the freight side, the community boards that you've served on, I looked through this long list, and just about all of them have some either connection to giving back to your community, whatever that community might be, from Zoo Atlanta to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce's, the Mexican American Chamber of Commerce, multiple instances of the United Way, serving on leadership boards, transition teams for community politicians that you believed in, is really impressive. And, when I asked that question of our guests of, what's been the biggest impact on your journey, I think part of the impact that you've had on other people's journey bears repeating. So thank you on behalf of all the people that you've helped, from Department of Economic Development and all the jobs you helped create in the state of Georgia to all the people that you've influenced and helped along the way. I think it's pretty admirable.
Well, they're great, but like I teach my kids, and my daughters are at age 7, they started volunteering work, and they volunteer in 2 nonprofits right now. One is Agape, which my son's on the board now. My wife rolled off, but they teach underprivileged kids. So they were like 9 years old going into Agape, teaching 5 years old how to do math and so forth. But you've got to give back, especially to a city, a state, and a country that gave us so much, right? You got to give back.
Yeah, so many people don't, right? And don't see that as a priority. Everybody's busy. Everyone's got a full plate, as they say, and lots of things they could do. But you made time, from training and education to what you've done over the years is pretty neat. And sort of lesson for people listening and watching. That's something to learn from, for sure.
I think, in Cuba, my father's family and my Lebanese family, both, they had businesses. My Cuban grandfather owned a part of a bank, 2 cattle ranches, and they lost everything. And then you come into this country and you lose everything. And then another country takes you on. And it gives you the opportunity to succeed. You've got it. You have to get back. And that's the way we see it. It's part of our, I guess I want to say, our DNA too. My children, my son, both my son and my nephew are on different nonprofit boards. My wife, in fact, a little while ago, I had to turn this phone off because I was almost getting on the call, but she just toured the new Egerton campus. And I think it's an Arthur Blank is doing a center there. And she goes, okay, we have to get the money. And I need to bring them. And she goes, and you need to come take a tour too. And I go, but you already toured it. And she goes, yeah, but you have to tour it too because this is amazing. So you got to get back.
Yeah. It reminds me just a couple of things. And I don't know if you remember, I think you do, Howard Morrison. Do you remember Howard? He was on he was one of the founding members of the CNS Bank. So it sort of jumped in my mind that we're talking about leadership. We're talking about giving back, and we're talking about Savannah. And sadly, we lost him a few years ago, but another great role model in Howard Morrison, who believed in making connections and giving back and leadership. And he was a great mentor of mine. And it was very sad when we lost him, but you remind me a lot of him and what you've done for the community.
Yeah, a lot of the boards I'm on, I tell the chairman, I get more out of it, I think, that I put in, because when you work for your family since you're 7 years old, and then you run a family business, you don't really you have family mentors, but you don't have corporate mentors. And when I sit on these boards, I would watch these amazing CEOs, right? From Tom Bell to Roberto Corsetta to Veronica Biggins, Igor Jones, right? These are amazing folks from Atlanta that were Coca-Cola, Bank of America, Wachovia Bank, First Union Bank. And again, these banks don't even exist anymore, like First Union, right? They've merged. But these leaders, I was sitting next to Oz Nelson, chairman of the board of UPS, right before we took it public at a United Way board meeting. And I was a $3 million a year company. And here I'm sitting next to Oz Nelson. Holy, right?
Real, yeah.
Diet of transportation, right? I had, I think, 15 drivers. He probably had, 150,000 drivers. But I would watch them, right? How they cared about the city, and how they led not just their companies, but led in these nonprofit organizations where they're sitting next to their competitors and they worked united, right? They weren't, when they were in, whether it's United Way or any nonprofit or the chambers, right? The Georgia Chamber, the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
You've got groups, they're CEOs from competing companies. And in these organizations, they learn to work together, work united, which is something I think, I'm not getting into politics, but something that, we are the United States of America. The word united, there's a reason wwhy that word is there, right? Work united.
That's true.
United. So I learned a lot from these folks.
Yeah, it's incredible that being your experience around some of those folks as well. I can't imagine some of the conversations and lessons you learned there. Maybe share a couple valuable lessons you learned working with freight. What are some of your mantras and lessons you've learned more in the business side and the freight side of your business?
Yeah, we meet. We have different facilities, right? In New Jersey, we have a distribution in New Jersey, one right outside Washington, D.C. So we have 3 calls a day where we go over the issues. And we work a little bit different than like Cisco and these guys, where each center is its own profit center.
Mm-hmm.
We're one company, so we can move assets around. But the one thing I tell folks that what we do is really just move product from point A to point B. And if we do it correctly and efficiently, we're successful. It is a complicated business, but it's not a complicated business. If you do it well, it's not complicated. But I think, what I instill in them is this is a business that we're in. We're always going to have drivers, run late, flat tires, engine issues, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it has some complexity to it, but we do provide a service to our customers, which are restaurants and grocery stores. And the last thing they want to hear is your truck broke down. So it's a very intense, but it's what we do. And I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, it does. You said it. I was just going to maybe just use another phrase. They say time is money, right? And if you've got produce and I'm not going to pretend to know all the things you have, but I bet some of it's perishable. And, like with any business, they want their product on time. You said it. They don't want to hear that the truck broke down. So how do you mitigate for that? But
right. No, I think you nailed it right. I mean, what I tell the staff, and that's what I was looking for, is that, we have one enemy and it's not our competitors. All right. And there's one thing that we don't have any more of. We have less every second. It's time. Every minute that driver is down, it's costing us money, and we can't regain those minutes. So time is our enemy. It's the only enemy we have. I mean, competition is good. It just makes it stronger, right?
Right.
My job is to figure out how to be better than Cisco and U.S. Food Service.
Are they your competitors? And this is an I didn't ask you before. Cisco and U.S. Foods, you would consider them competitors? The
competitors, and they're great competitors. I mean, I had Professor Tom Stanley at Georgia State, he passed away a few years ago, said you want a customer and a competitor, right, to be smart, because those are the best ones. So Cisco, their overhead is much greater than mine, so They make smart business decisions. It's really the small independent guys that they don't track their fuel cost or their cost per mile. They'll make a delivery, and you wonder, how can you do that? It's because they're not looking at the cost side. So Cisco, they're great competitors, and great to benchmark best practices against.
Yeah, that's how you can grow. Yeah.
But time is, like I tell folks, time is our enemy. And we work on what's called a 15-minute increment. So if there's a driver down or delayed for whatever reason, the customer's not there, we ship the wrong product, the clock starts ticking. Not that we solve the problem in 15 minutes. We just have to have not a solution, but solutions, right? Different drivers down because he got to the customer's not there to receive the order, okay? And he's an hour and a half away. So option 1, he waits. Option 2, if he's got a customer down the street, have him go do that when he come back. Option 3 is let him continue with the route. And let's say he's going from Mobile to New Orleans and the customer's in Mobile. Can we put that, tell the customer, look, we'll hit you on the way back from New Orleans and get you to tomorrow. So
be flexible, right?
Be flexible. So in 15 minutes, we need to have at least thought out solutions. Then we decide as a team, or the ops department decides as a team, and they'll execute one of those options based on the customer needs, the company needs, and most importantly, the driver needs. So there are three needs we consider: customer, driver, and company.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great transition to the next question I was going to ask you. You know, some of the, broad question, what kind of challenges you're facing? And I know you mentioned drivers. Going back a step, you mentioned, if the truck breaks down or if the customer's not ready, whatever the case may be, that driver's got to sit and wait. Not only does that cost you money, you said it, that the driver gets frustrated, and if the driver's frustrated, he may leave, right? Because there's so many, it's such a buyer's market out there, has been for a long time. So some of the challenges you're facing, I would assume, driver shortage, not just of somebody who can push a wheel and turn a wheel and push a pedal, but safe, qualified, professional drivers that I know work for you. What are some of the other challenges? Maybe talk about that one, and then some of the other challenges you're having as a business facing today.
I mean, labor number one.
In general, yeah.
We've been very successful in keeping our drivers, especially the over-the-road drivers. And still, in finding drivers, we've been successful. I think a lot of reasons. We didn't close during COVID. We said our competitor did panic and didn't close. And a lot of the public companies had to because of the optics of it, right? Privately held, sent everyone home other than drivers in warehouse. I came and my CFO and my HR director. There were 5 of us that came to work out of 100 every day to work. And we were putting in 14-hour days, make sure that our day shift and our night shift and our drivers saw us alongside them making these others. So we've been able to keep them. The biggest issue with labor I see is that, these trucking schools are putting out, because of the high demand, they're putting out folks that you put them on a truck and you're like wondering, how'd you get that driver's license?
Yeah.
So we put them in. We've had, luckily, no one's got hurt, but we've had, several issues in the last year, only 4, but in all small trucks, not tractor trailers, but in 43 years, we may have had 1  with like that. And here we've had 4 in 9 months. And they're all new drivers, certified. We set them out with our drivers. But I think it's just, they look at it as a job, not a career. Very different. Some of my old timers, they're young, but they've been in the business in their rigs for 20, 30 years.
Right.
For them, it's a career choice. It isn't a job.
It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. Folks come in today. It's a job. It's like, I'm going to do this for 2 years. And then what? I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So it's that. So the challenges we face is with labor, trucking. We had to steal Paul to pay Peter. So we stole from the warehouse guys. We moved them into driving. So then we had which was actually harder to fill, the warehouse folks versus day. But I would tell you, Georgia has and I think we talked about it when we were on the board together, that second chance program.
Mm-hmm.
And that has worked fairly well for us, giving folks a second chance. It worked better at the beginning than at the end. Okay, I think I bragged about it so much to a lot of folks in the industry that, whether it's hospitals or trucking companies, whatever, they started hiring these folks.
Yeah.
So now, the pickings got, not as good as before. So, but it's a great program that's helped us through. And then contract laborers, we come in and we've been able to convert them to full-time employees. So I think those have been on labor, the biggest challenges that we've had.
Yeah. And so those, just to build on that some more, you mentioned the Ryder program, just availability. I just maybe speak to the availability of assets. If you're leasing them now or we're buying them, tractors and trailers. You mentioned you have box trucks. Do you have tractor trailers as well? And
we do. We have probably 70 to 80 power units.
Okay.
And probably 90 trailers. And then box trucks, we probably have 30, 40 box trucks. And then we rent as well. So yeah, whether it's getting parts or just getting a truck.
Yeah.
I think it was Utility of Great Dane last year. We signed on for 10, 15 new trailers. And first of all, they went up tremendously, right? So we signed up, and the best part of it is they said, well, it's 2 years out. Maybe
wow.
1.5, 2 years out. I'm like, okay. And I go, okay, all right. So I'm ready on the price, the contract. He goes, but read the last line. 10 weeks prior to delivery, they'll call us and they'll tell us if the price is going to have a market adjustment, a higher price. the price is never going down, right?
Yeah. They didn't give you a
Go
discount
up.
for waiting 2 years.
They're like, well, it could go down. Like, yeah, well, sure. It's
Sure.
not going to go down.
It didn't
But
say that in that last line, did it? Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's $1.7 million in traders for what are new. And I don't even know my price. And 10 weeks out, it's not like you can say, I just buy one someplace else. You're still going to have to wait. So yeah, we won't know the price that comes in. Parts are an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Ryder is a great partner of ours. And they're not immune from this, right? They can't get parts, they can't get laborers, and their labor folks. Remember, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, Ryder would hire a mechanic, right? And he would just call into the tractor, unscrew a little screw, and the oil will drop out, change the oil, and then check out your spark plugs, and that's it, right? Maybe your hose, and you go. Today, it's not a mechanic; it's a computer technician, right? You look at the engine; it's got a plastic cover on top, so it's not a mechanic; it's a technician that you're hiring. And these guys, they're sitting behind a computer, diagnosing, whatever.
Yeah. Diagnosed. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
The engine, it's a different criteria for that individual. So to get those folks, and again, you don't raise your kids to be a truck mechanic, right? Or a truck driver. You say, son, daughter, I want you to be an attorney, all right? Or a doctor. But these technicians for Ryder make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? And tractor trailer hours for us, some of our high performers are making 115,000, 120,000, and they're home on the weekends. That's not
Sure.
maybe where you're out for a month. It's, you take 2 routes a week. You'll go out for 2 nights, come home. All right. You can choose to go home, or we have a gym here and showers here, shower, pick up the bump and go. And then you're out for the 2 nights. If you don't break down, maybe 3 if you break down. Essentially, our routes are Monday to Friday. So our drivers are coming back Friday afternoon to Friday night. And again, if there's a delay, weather, whatever, they're getting on Saturday. And they're making very, very good money. But at the same token, these are folks that see this as a career.
Right. It's not a 2-year gig that they're going to try out for a while. Yeah. You even get some more drivers that drive a long ways and make good money, but it is a lifestyle for sure. Yeah. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit of just COVID and the impact. It's still ongoing, right? But hopefully, knock on wood, the sort of the end of the dilemma here. It has had lasting impact on our business models. My office, we do a remote work, but maybe talk a little bit about how COVID and the pandemic and the 2020, 2021 blur, how that impacted your business and how you survived through that. Clearly, you did. So
yeah. So December. We were remodeling our home in Atlanta. So we were living in a little bitty apartment, what's supposed to be like a 5-6 month remodel became almost a 2-year remodel.
Yeah.
By luck, we ended up having the only apartment we found was in the same building. My mother, she lives right across the street from the Atlanta History Center. So, which was really great during COVID because I got to see my mom every day. We were on the 4th floor and she was on the 1st. But, in December, I started, and I call it a plan, it's not a plan. Just started, common sense, right? They're going to shut down. Countries are going to shut down. Before there was talk about it, but while I was watching in the news, this is, pandemic. People are going to panic, and
they did.
Yeah, I have no idea, but the panic, I could hear it.
Yeah.
So in January, the first week of January, I told our head of procurement, we import from garlic from China. Bring me at least a year's supply of garlic. Then we import a lot from Europe, from Spain, from Thailand. From South Korea. I go buy from every Asian country, anything that doesn't have a shelf life, right? They can last over a year and bring in a year's supply. Never thought that we were going to have supply chain issues in the United States. I just figured more it would be Europe and Asia.
Right.
So we were okay from that point. My wife thought I was crazy because during spring break, my daughter was an international trip in Belize, and we were in Colorado, and this is end of February, first week of March, and I'm watching this thing like blow up. It's like you're ruining our vacation. I'm like, baby, they're going to shut down this country. We got to get back. We flew back. Luckily, my daughter was able to make it back in before they shut the country down. So on March 9th, I think it was Monday, whatever that Monday was, out of 100 people that work in the office, I sent 95 home, and we spread them out. Was it 20% a day? Just make sure we didn't overwhelm our systems. Luckily, we've had enough practice with work from home. We've had all the technology for it for years. The phone system was another thing we were in the process of updating, and we just updated a few months later. So right now, our entire sales force is will continue permanently to work from home.
Remote. No.
Operations, HR, and purchasing are back in the office. We survived because we were there with our troops, right? We made sure that our drivers saw us, took care of them. I remember walking in the warehouse, going over about safety measures, wearing your mask, keeping your 7-foot distance, and all that kind of stuff. But it was a lot of, I think, back to what my mom taught me, the empathy, right? I would talk to leaders of other organizations, they were at home while their frontline guys were out there making the deliveries and so forth. Now, we never closed, which was also an advantage. Corporate, some of the corporate companies had to because of the opposite. So while they closed, we stay open, and that picked up some loyalty from our customers, and realized that, it's not just, price isn't the only determining factor.
You were a partner. You were there for them when they needed you. Yeah.
Right. So that's gone a long ways for us. And we still, right now, we can do, if we can get more equipment, not even the labor issue, we got under control. We can even get more equipment. We could even do, we're doing amazing this year and last year too. We can do even better if we had more equipment. That's
awesome. Well, so just jump forward to the last little bit here, look to the future. I always like to think about what you talked a little bit about this, about jobs and careers and lifestyles, but the next generation, the young boys and girls that are watching this at home, right? That are interested in the freight journey. Hopefully that's happening. But what would you tell them the most exciting thing about freight is, and because I've done it too. I've stood in front of Rotary clubs and said, "Hey, how many people here want their kids and daughters to work in a warehouse or drive a truck?" And no hands go up. And I get that, but so we have a perception problem. So what would you tell the next generation is exciting about trucking and how to succeed like you did?
Oh, I would say our night shift pickers, some of them, our high performers, make $2,000 a week.
Wow.
$2,000 a week. It's based on production. They get as high as $35 an hour, the high performers. And of course, not that we don't care about time and a half, but we offer it. So I rather have less people making more money than more people making less money. So they take like I told them, lack of work, we don't have. So we have work. So if you want to work an extra 5 hours, even though it's time and a half, we'll give it to you. So what I would tell the young folks is that, not everyone's meant to go to college, right? Not everyone's meant to be a doctor. I keep telling my daughters, you guys should be brain surgeons. They go, Dad, we don't like blood. So I would say
that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But they like design, they like the influencer thing on Instacart on the TikTok and all that stuff. Yeah. So my point, I try to tell them, you have two options, two choices. You can see it as a job, you can see it as a career. You look at it as a career, it's successful. There's nothing wrong with being a professional truck driver. It is a career, and it's probably. Think about it. When COVID hit, everything was shut down except what? Hospitals and food distribution companies.
That's right. Yep.
Stores. Essential. You need
both of which revolve around transportation.
Around transportation, medical supplies. The CEO of Emory Hospital, Bryce, calls me up and hey, we need storage. I'll pay you whatever. Can we warehouse all these supplies? Absolutely not. I'm on charge of it. We did. We stored medical supplies here for about 2 months. Right. So the essential stuff that they needed was at the hospital, and less not essential stuff we put here in the warehouse for 5 months. So there's a reason why doctors still went to work and transportation companies still went to work. We needed food. We needed medical supplies. So they're an essential part of our economy. And I tell you, our drivers, our HR managers, also our in-house counsel, we didn't know what's happening. They were talking about that the police will stop you on the street, the sheltering home and all that. So we made certificates saying that they work for a food distribution company. So like a pass. So that, and to them, I was like, oh my God, it's like a badge of honor.
Sure.
Wow. So it is a career, but some folks see it as a job, and it's unfortunate. But listen, I enjoy what I do. I did what you said. I drove trucks. Back then they didn't have ramps or lift gates. Now my drivers are spoiled. And when my lift gate broke, it's okay.
And yeah.
But
stuff's got to come off somehow, right?
yeah. So
That's funny.
but it's a career.
Yeah. So last question. So if you could go talk to the young folks, if you could go back to the young Rene, right? 18 years old, starting in your dad's, what became a huge distribution company. What would you tell if I was young Rene, what would you tell young Rene about starting off, and what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've thought about it a lot. And I mean, I don't think I would have done anything different other than figure out how I can convince my great drivers from becoming old. How do I get them from, how do I get them to say, Rene, I'm 55, 60 years old now. I can't unload those trucks anymore.
Yeah.
How do I keep them from getting old physically, right?
Fountain of youth. That's what you'd go find the fountain of youth. That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've told, I'll put a young guy to help you unload, and you drive, and they're like, I don't like sharing my cab with another human being. And you get it, right? So finding that solution, because we've lost a lot of amazing drivers to basically retirement. Yeah. And
that's true. I mean, that you're not the only one suffering from that. I mean, I've talked about it at public gatherings, and it's an industry problem where a lot of the folks who see it as careers are the ones, to your point, the ones you want to keep. Those careers end at some point, and they move on to greener pastures and retire. So
I think about this. I've got 2 girls getting ready to go to college. You put your kids through college, and you spend out of state in the college $50,000-$60,000 a year, in state
Sure.
20, 30, and then you invest in these kids. I told my daughters it's going to be, by the time you guys go to college in 2 years, probably $60,000 a year per child. So $120,000 4 years is $500,000-$600,000, but you got to make $1 million to net $600,000. I go, you don't go there for a college experience and fraternity and sororities. You go there to learn. So imagine a parent, you invest in your child, and they say, Dad, I want to be an underwater welder. But you went to Harvard. I go, yeah, but I want to be an underwater welder. Dad, they pay $375 an hour. Okay, be an underwater welder. I mean,
sold. Got it. Yep. Go weld.
Yeah. So I think just some folks, it's not that they're not meant to go to college, but some folks says, what, I can make a really good living, right? Climbing a telephone pole for Georgia Power, right? I don't have to go to college to be a manager, making $55,000 a year at Georgia Power. I can make really good money climbing a telephone pole for Georgia Power.
That's right. Yep.
For Diaz Foods.
Well, that's a story I know you tell when you get out into these groups, and that we need as an industry to keep telling, and the marketing side of what we do about whether it's food distribution or logistics or transportation. We do have an incredible career, especially here in Georgia. So much opportunity and so many jobs that we need to fill.
You got Port of Georgia, and those containers come in, but they got to be moved somehow, and it's going to be on a flight.
Yeah, Griff was one of our first guests on the show, and talked a lot about the labor problems of the shortage and finding quality people on the docks, in the warehouse, and then the drivers that support and move that cargo in and out. So it's incredible.
I'll tell you a quick story about the problem with our industry and the trucking. It's not sexy, right? We're not. Sort of like, you look at garbage disposal. That's good business, all right? But it's not sexy. So a friend of mine, very affluent young lady, meets a young man. They're in their 40s, and decided to get married. So we're talking. She goes, I met a great young man, and we're making that young man. He was 40, and so he goes, what does he do? And she goes, I don't know, something called pallets. Now here's a woman that very affluent, Hermes bags, that kind of stuff. She's dating a guy that's pallets. And then she goes, doesn't sound sexy. I go, it's not sexy at all. But everything, those Hermes bags that you have, they were transported on pallets. Everything goes on pallets, right? And you think about it, they use pallets as a way to determine our economic stability, right? The better our economy, the less pallets that are needed, the less.
That's right.
The worse our economy is. So it's our problem. It's not a sexy business. It really isn't. Working for Starbucks is sexy. $10 an hour.
Technology, Facebook, all that. Apple. That's what people see as sexy. You're right. We have a problem with perception in our industry. Have for a long time, and we need guys like you to keep selling the sexy, right? Because we got a lot of growth and opportunity out there that we'll all see. So,
definitely. Yeah.
Well, Rene, I really appreciate it, man. I can do this for another 3 hours with you.
No,
I've got more pages of questions that we're not even going to get to. We'll have you back and maybe get your son and nephew on here as well. But really appreciate you coming. Before we go, tell our listeners and viewers how they can connect with Diaz Foods or one of your companies if you're because I know you're hiring, or if somebody wants to work with you.
You know what? Send me the email directly. It's
Okay.
Rene.Diaz Diaz at diazfoods.com.
Gotcha.
And subject matter, I'm opening up a restaurant, or I'm looking for a trucking job or warehouse job, and I'll forward it to the right manager. So it's just Rene at diazfoods.com.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the links, and the link to your website and some other social media stuff that any of your company has. We'll put all that in the links below the podcast on the viewing side, so our guests can connect with you. So again, thank you, Rene, for being part of us. That's the end of our show for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching this, and take care and enjoy your own personal freight journey.
Thank you, Paige.